Hello, hello. We are starting another week of live stream with Home Savvy Central. I'm Mike Patel. If you're coming here for the first time, obviously nobody's here right now. I'm just starting. But if you're going to be watching a recording of this, I wanted to introduce myself if you haven't come to my YouTube channel or my live. Again, I'm Mike Patel in Anaheim Hills. Today we have a very important topic, very catchy topic. The topic is 40% more homes on the market. Is this a buyer's dream or a seller's nightmare? Because we're hearing things are slowing down in certain areas. We are hearing that there's more inventory coming up, and we are hearing that the prices are stabilizing, but it's different in different areas. So before we get into the conversation, I wanted to bring on a guest. His name is Kevin. So I'm going to bring him on stage. Kevin, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. How you doing, Mike?
Pretty good. How are you? Welcome, Kevin, again. I know you were my guest about a month ago and you had so much information and knowledge and trends. I thought I'll bring you back. As you know, we're going to talk about the inventory has gone up. Homes are taking longer to sell. Prices seem to be going up, but they're stabilizing. So we'll chat about that. You're in Atlanta. Why don't you take a minute or so to introduce yourself so our guest knows who you are?
So I'm Kevin Jefferson on YouTube. I'm Kevin Jefferson, the People's Lender. I am a mortgage loan originator. I can help you nationwide. I can also do investments. And, I've been in the real estate space for about 20 years between being a real estate agent as well as a lender. I think I provide a unique set of skills because I understand the pain points from both sides, and I'm a buyer too. So I understand the pain points of a buyer, and I've been through the process.
Right. That's exactly why I wanted to chat with you because one, you're the buyer side, so you're talking or thinking from the consumer's level. You're also a lender, so you know what buyers go through challenges today with so many strict guidelines. These lenders have been strict, which is good in a way, but bad in a way. At the same time, you have challenges as a buyer going through the real estate process, working with an agent, working with the new regulations, which are not only in California, but nationwide with the new regulation that came out in August. But we won't talk about the regulations today. We'll talk about the inventory. So to get started, I'm just going to show a quick chart and then we'll go from there. So this chart here, let me discuss it on it. It's from realtor.com. And I mentioned that the inventory is going up year over year since September 2023 through 2024. Inventory is up 34%, which is pretty significant. But remember, I always say that the market is hyper local. So just because it's up 34%, maybe in your area or your neighborhood, it may be up 5% or 50%. But on average, year over year, September increase in inventory, if you can see this here where the arrow is, it's 34% higher. We have almost 941,000 homes for sale, which is significantly high than in January, where there were about almost 675,000 homes for sale. So, yes, it has gone up. But if you look at the inventory in, let's say, pre pandemic 2018, the orange, the inventory was about almost 1.3 million. So, even though the inventory has gone up, it's still lower than the normal market. So, Kevin, when you see this chart, are you panicking or what does this mean to you, not only as a buyer, but as a lender and as a possibly a realtor?
So I'm not a realtor now, but as a lender,
Right.
we are looking at the inventory, and we're saying, okay, we have more inventory than we've had over the last, year over year, right? And
Hmm.
now we also have interest rates which have come down some, even though they went back up the last couple of weeks, they've come down some and they're still kind of the lowest they've been in the last 18, 20 months. So we have a group of sellers that are willing to sell. We've got a group of buyers that are willing to buy, but how do we bring them together? Like what gets them over the hump? And my concern is that people are going to wait until it's a crowded market and then we see a buying frenzy and then everybody's like, hey, we should have purchased when no one was really looking.
Hmm.
So that's like I'm always trying to figure out like why aren't they buying? What would spur them to buy? Rates went down a little bit. There's more houses to choose from. There may be more people that are pre-approved, but it's like now, like right now before Halloween, um, people are still looking, and then I think after Halloween, middle of November, people get in holiday mode and stop looking, and I
Hmm.
think that's a great time to buy. But I'm just
Right,
trying to figure out like what happens after the election, what happens after the holidays, and all we can really do, Mike, as professionals, yourself and mine, is just put out great information like we're doing now,
right,
educate the public, and in hopes that they learn and figure out no one's going to save them. No one's going to give them a house, that you have to still position yourself.
right.
So it's been some challenges in the market. From my side as a lender, we get an opportunity to help people refinance where realtors like yourself don't have that option.
Right, right. And you made a good point. And here's what I want to mention about inventory. Let's take Florida, for example. And I hate to put Florida in a corner, but Florida has a very, I think, of all the states, and I'm just guessing based on the reports I've read, it's not just a wild guess, but of all the states, Florida has the highest inventory. Several reasons. Number one, they've had a lot of crisis after crisis for the last few months, but even last year and 2 years ago, we've had the condo crisis, we have the disasters. So in Florida, the insurance rates have skyrocketed, just like California, but more in Florida. And on top of that, the HOA, especially in the skyrise condominium buildings, the high rises where they have a lot of expenses, HOAs have doubled or tripled. Insurance have doubled or tripled. So there's a lot of vacant properties there. A lot of people cannot afford it. So there's a big inventory there. So when you said that, hey, inventory, the prices are stabilizing, the interest rates were low, how come nobody's buying? So one example in Florida is, hey, I can afford the $600,000 house, but now I have to pay association of 600 or 700 or 800 a month, which used to be $200 or $300. My insurance, which the buyer was paying 1,000 a month, now I'm paying 5,000 because the insurance companies are profiting, or what do you call, price gouging? Maybe not, maybe they are. So I can afford the house because I have an additional 1,500 a month in property taxes, insurance, HOA. So not singling Florida out, but that could be one reason. So it's a catch 22 that the prices have dropped, or not dropped, but they've stabilized. Rates, as you mentioned, were 6% or so last week, if I remember. They're up to 6.5 this week. I'm guessing that based on what reports I saw. And so there are still sales, but there's also no sales in certain areas. Tennessee is taking a hit. So, I wanted to show another report and read that out, Kevin, and then we can talk about it. And if any guests that come in, if they have any questions or comments, please make comments below. Let's look at this. This is a report from Realtor.com, so it's not coming from me or Kevin. It's the report from August 2024 monthly housing market trends. And I'll read the first few lines and we'll discuss about that. It says here that the number of homes actively for sale continued to be elevated compared with last year, growing by 35.8%, a 10th straight month of growth, and now sits at the highest since May of 2020. The total number of unsold homes, including homes that are under contract, increased by 21% compared to last year. Home sellers slowed down their listing activity in August, with a 0.9% fewer homes newly listed on the market compared with last year. This is the first negative reading in nearly a year. And I'll read the next point and then we'll kind of discuss on it. It says here that the median price of homes for sale this August decreased by 1.3% compared with last year at 429,990. However, the median price per square foot grew by 2.3%, indicating that the inventory of smaller and more affordable homes continued to grow in share. So, is there anything that kind of shines at you about this report, or that concerns you, Kevin, or that if I'm a buyer or a seller that I have to keep in mind?
Yeah, and I had this conversation earlier today with some buyers in a consultation. Affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
What That's relative to where you are. So you're in California. Affordable housing to you may be $3,000 a month. Affordable housing to somebody in Idaho could be $1,500 a month. In the Georgia market, it could be 2,500. So what I want people to understand is affordable housing is relative to where you are, which kind of piggybacks on one of the candidates for the presidential election mentioning affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and everybody's like, yeah, affordable housing. And listen, this is not a political statement, but it's just giving you an understanding of what they can and can't control.
Mm-hmm.
They can't control what I want to sell my lot for. And they can't control what the builder wants to sell the buildings, the houses that he or she is building for. There's no control over that. So the only way to truly be able to give affordable housing is to give a credit to the sellers. There's
Right.
plenty of opportunities and programs for buyers. I think we're missing giving the seller some incentive so they can keep the land at a specific price so it then becomes affordable to the end consumer. So you got to, I feel like you have to give a credit to the seller if
Mm-hmm.
they're different than who the builder is.
Okay.
And by
So
giving a credit to them and the builder, the only way they could get that incentive is if they pass that along to the consumer. Then you can control affordable housing. But to say that you're going to have affordable housing, if I have a lot for sale and I can get $600,000 for it, unless there's any other reason to do it, I'm going to sell it for $600,000. If you buy that lot from me, you say, okay, I'm gonna spend $600,000 for this lot, break it up into subdivision, and build $900,000 homes. That's not affordable housing to somebody in Idaho, but it might be in California.
mm-hmm.
So, like when we talk about affordable housing, I think we need to understand what's in our particular location, in our area. And again, let's say we're here in Georgia, affordable housing to a person on Social Security and disability may be $1,000 versus a person or two household family that says it's $1,500 to
Right.
$2,000. So
Right.
that's what sticks out to me. That's like how can you quantify what affordable housing is?
Right. Right.
Um, on a national scale,
Right.
right? I know
So right.
we all want to pay as least as possible, but our
Right.
least where we are is different than somebody else.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I understand how you saying that you need to give credit to the sellers, but if I'm a buyer or a consumer, I'm thinking, wait a minute, anybody who bought a house 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 10 years ago, or even 12 years ago, and if I'm thinking about selling, my house has probably doubled in the last 12 years. If I bought it in 2010, I'm guarantee you, at least in California, my house has doubled. Or equity has grown 4 or 5% a year for the last 10 years. So if I bought a house for $400,000 in 2010, and assume I'm in Texas, for example, my house is worth $800,000. Now, when I want to sell it, why would government want to give seller a credit? He's sitting on a 400 or 300 or 100,000 equity, whereas the buyer, who's a first-time home buyer, fixed income, wife, husband, or two brothers or two friends working together, if they want to buy it, they're paying this high price, $800,000 house that was 400,000 7, 8, 9 years ago. Why shouldn't they get all the credit? Because they are the one, quote, being challenged to buy, where you have to come up with the down payment, you have to come up with closing cost, you have to come in with the moving cost, you still have to pay the inflation cost of gas and electricity and everything else. So I would rather, my opinion is, I'd rather see buyers get more incentive than the seller, because seller's already laughing no matter what. They got a lot of equity in there.
Right.
And I'm
So
thinking
the
like a
example,
consumer, not an
right.
agent, but like a consumer, right?
Right. The example I was utilizing is if they're looking to develop affordable housing.
Okay.
Like if we sell our houses now, yeah, not really any
Right.
incentive that we can get when we walk away with $500,000.
Right. Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? We
Right.
got the money, so you
Yeah.
pass that along to buyers. But to that tract of land that that farmer has that he or she may be getting ready to sell, or a person that inherited some land, um, in order, like in order to get lower pricing, they'd have to get some sort of tax credit. That's the only. I think that's the
Okay.
only way it works.
Right. So they
Because
can
everybody
sell.
thinks,
Yeah.
yep,
When they sell, as far as your tax credit goes, you don't have to pay taxes and all that. Um,
yeah,
for the
or
land. Okay.
anything
Right.
over X amount of dollars doesn't get taxed or something like that, just to
Right.
kind of help them keep it. Okay, I may not make this extra $100,000, but I got $150,000 credit that I don't get taxed on. You know,
Right. So what
it's a
you
shot in the dark.
referring to? Maybe you're referring to the smaller lots, maybe an acre, 2 acre, 3 acres. But when it comes to big lots, 20 acres, 30 acres, 50 acres, where developers are going to buy it, like DR Horton or KB Homes or all these big guys that are public companies, they don't need any credit when they buy. So the seller's going to get the price they want. So maybe there should be a limit. And of course, we're just thinking out loud. Maybe for smaller home sellers, with a certain income limit, blah, 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 there's a credit. But when you're talking 100 acres, 200 acres, where these developers buy it and cut it into pieces and build apartments on one side and condos on one side and homes on one side and a shopping center on one side, because cities want you to build a school, a shopping center, library, things like that. There's plenty of money there. So it's not fair that they get this credit because they're already making a lot of money. But I'm just thinking out as if I'm a buyer, that's how I'm thinking.
Got you. Got you. Yeah, I mean, it's all relative
It's all
to the
relative. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
thought process, but then buyers can take advantage of the same thing when they become the seller.
Right. Right.
Um,
Okay.
yep.
Okay. But let's look at some other points and I'll continue and then we can discuss on that. The next point is, this is very key. It says here that homes, let me see, where is it? Homes spent 53 days. Let me start over. Homes spent 53 days on the market, the slowest August in 5 years. This is 7 days more than last year and 3 days more than last month. What they're talking about, and of course I kind of mumbled and jumbled there, what they're talking about is how long does it take to sell a house? In California, in Anaheim Hills, 3 years ago, homes sold in 2 or 3 days. There used to be time in 2021. I remember homes sold in 3 hours, right? Now it's taking 53 days. Of course, this is a national average. Maybe Florida is taking 180 days. Orange County right now is taking anywhere from 35 to 45 days. Atlanta area, Kevin, in your area, it may be a little bit less, but the average is 53 days, which is still much lower than the average of 90 days in a normal market, right?
Right. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
If you look at it, yeah, it's the highest it's been in 5 years. However, it's still shaving off 37 days off the normal time, which is still fast.
Which is still fast. 53 days is fast. I took a listing last week. I had an open house, the first open house, and I thought I'll have 30, 40, 50 people. I'm just dancing. I'm going to have a lot of people. I was ready. I had a lot of water. I had snacks. I was energized. Guess what happened? From 12 to 2, this is a listing in a very good area. The house shows very well. I have staged the house. So online, when buyers look at it, they're going to like the house. They're going to like the price. They're going to like the floor plan. $1.7 million, moving condition, 3,000 square feet. Guess what? From 12 to 2, zero people walked in, zero. And I said, oh my God, in 20 years or 25 years, I've been doing open houses. I've never had no people show up for the first 2 hours, first time. And this is in a hot market that we're on. Luckily, from 2 to 4, because the open house was from 12 to 4, I had about 10 or 12 groups walk in. So I did have traffic. I don't have an offer yet. It's been 10 days and I'm panicking because I don't have an offer. Uh, but the market has shifted. I mean, in a normal market or in 2 years ago, I would have had offers by now, 2 or 3 offers. I do have a couple of agents interested, but there's no offers.
What's the price point?
It's 1.7, 3,000 square feet. House was built in the mid 1990s or early 2000.
Early 2000.
Yeah, great house, great neighborhood, great schools, very desirable area. A lot of youngsters moving in. 30-year-old, 40-year-old millennials moving in. A lot of families moving in. So I'm not concerned. It's only been 10 days. And I hear you mentioned earlier the election. what I'm seeing is a lot of people are panic. There's a lot of toxicity in the air. People don't want to buy a big purchase right now because they don't know what's going to happen. There's war going on in Ukraine and Israel and other places. So I know it doesn't really impact the home sales activity, but people are kind of not happy right now with all these things. You go on social media, you go on TikTok, you go on Facebook, you go to a party, and the talk is the war, the talk is the politics. And I think people are just cannot concentrate. And of course, this is my own mumbo jumbo that I'm talking about, but it does affect, I think. And people are just holding off until things cool down after, after 3 weeks, we'll find out. And either way, I'm not taking any sides. Whoever comes, at least, because like I said, there's a lot of toxicity out there. And that may be a slowdown.
Yeah, so same thing here. I talked to quite a few buyers. Like I said on my channel, I
Mhm.
have, I go live and I do different things and I talk to consumers and, and I'm on different people's channels and I see people waiting to see what's going to happen.
Mhm.
Like the Federal Reserve meets ironically like 3 days after the election's over.
Right.
And, that depending on who becomes president could be the last time Jerome Powell has a Fed meeting.
Yeah.
So,
And that's
um,
another thing they're waiting for. I'm glad you brought that up, and not to cut you off, but another thing they're waiting for, because I talked to a buyer. In fact, by the way, I just opened up an escrow today, and the lady, real nice lady, said, "Hey, should I wait because the rates may drop after election? Feds are going to drop another half a point." I said, "Well, we don't know what they're going to do, but don't lose this house. We've looked at homes, we made offers. This is the second or third home we're writing an offer on. To save a half a point or a quarter of a point, and you're taking a big chance, go for it." So luckily she went for it. So we open escrow today. Um, but we don't know what the feds are going to do, based on the election results. I hope for the buyer's sake and also for the seller's sake, because the seller, when they sell, are going to buy. So if they have a 4% interest rate and the rates drop to 5.5%, hey, I hope they do that. But that's another thing why people are waiting, and that may be another reason why inventory is going up, because people are waiting to see if there is a federal rate cut, because they anticipate it having one. They drop half a point, which was a big surprise to everybody, and now they're waiting for another surprise.
yeah,
Yeah,
the
you're a lender. What you might know? What do you think? Based on talking to your lenders and banks, you may know more about that than I do.
I think we'll see a Fed cut maybe a 0.25% when they meet. Um, how that will affect the real estate market. I still think it's going to depend on what the markets do after the president is elected.
Hmm.
But what I do know is historically, over the last 40 years, whether it's Democratic, Republican, the real estate market changes. It's affected. And typically we see an increase in housing prices and we see
Hmm.
an increase in interest rates. Um, Now, I don't know, and it'll be a good stat to look up later on for me is what's the market look like leading into the presidential election? Um, is this a different market than anybody has seen? That would be good information. But
Hmm.
typically there's a hit. Typically, depending on who's in, typically if Republicans get elected, the stock market does better. Um, so it just that's the reaction. Then, mortgage rates are based off the 10-year treasury bond. You
Hmm.
know, I don't think we've seen what we're going to see.
Okay.
Meaning the Fed have a cut coming up after the election. We're seeing the economy somewhat get better, with jobs report as well as inflation. It's not to the 2%. You've got an election coming up with, two new presidents. Well, one could be potentially former president, one's vice president, changing of the guards, either way, a new president. Um, but at the end of the day, you got to make your own economy. Um, I don't
Yeah.
think that. Either
Okay.
side has a strong push for housing.
Right.
So you have to figure out back to the basics. Okay, can we afford this house? You
Mm-hmm.
know, you know, we need to budget. Okay,
Right.
how do we make more money? How do we pay down some debt so we can get into a house? Because
Mm-hmm.
if it's former President Trump, he's only got 4 years to do what he needs to do. If it's Vice President Kamala Harris, she's got 8 years to do what she needs to do. However, Lord willing, beyond that 4 and 8 years, you still got to live.
Right.
So,
Okay. Right.
so
Okay.
I just feel like you
Right.
spur your own economy, you spur your own housing market because let's say they passed a bill that says they're going to give buyers $25,000 credit. You still got to be able to afford the house.
Yeah, correct.
You still
Yeah.
have to be able to afford the
Yeah.
house. You have to be able
Right.
to afford the payment.
Right.
So, you
Yep.
know, all of those things,
Yeah.
make for the market. But I do think that, you know, me personally, I think when there's less competition, there's more opportunity to negotiate because
Mm-hmm.
there's more. When I say less competition, if less people are looking to buy but they're approved and it's more inventory, then you as the buyer can go to the seller and let's say the seller in California wants 750, but you're willing to do 740 and you want 15 back in closing cost assistance because they
Mm-hmm.
need to get from point A to point B, they may be able to negotiate. But if you
Right.
wait until everybody and their mom's looking to buy a house, that 750 might be 770
Right.
with no closing cost.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I totally understand. Yeah. I mean, and as I keep saying, and I say it all the time, the market is hyper local. So what's happening? I'm in Anaheim Hills in Orange County, but Anaheim Hills is different than what's happening in Fullerton or Irvine, which is 20 minutes away, or Cerritos, half an hour away. So markets are very hyper local. And on that note, if you're watching live, please make any comments, or if you're watching this YouTube video after the live, please make some comments. And if you need to know in your neighborhood what's happening hyper locally, we have a database of all the top agents nationwide. Make a comment below or direct message me, and I can refer you to an agent. Even if you just want to know what's happening in the market, is it going up? Is it going down? How long is it taking to sell? Is it a good time to sell or buy? Feel free, there's no obligation. Or if I can answer the question personally, I'll be glad to do that, or even Kevin can do that. So keep that in mind. So I'm going to read the next point from this report, Kevin. It says here that the share of listings with price cuts reached the highest for an August in over 5 years, increasing by 3.1 percent points compared with last year to 19.3%. So what they're saying is when it comes to your price cuts is that at listed price, let's say in Anaheim Hills, if a house is listed for $1 million and if it doesn't sell in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month, then the agent asks the seller to reduce the price to maybe 975 or 995, whatever. So there is an increase in price cuts. That is because there is an increase in inventory. They go hand in hand because in those areas where there's price cuts, there's a lot more inventory and buyers are getting picky and they're not paying the full price. Or the other reason could be that sellers are, quote, and if you're a seller, don't get mad at me. I'm saying that if sellers are greedy and if the market value is $1 million, but you're asking for 1.1, you're going to have to list it at $1 million so it sells at market value. So there's two reasons for a price cut. Number one, home sales activity is going down, or you've priced it too high.
Right. So like on my side as a lender, I'll get calls from people looking to sell their home and I'll have a conversation with them because they're looking to see, okay, I want to sell my house. I need to see how much I can afford.
Mm-hmm.
They already typically have the house listed, which is backwards because sometimes because you own a home, you can't afford to buy another one because you may have messed up your credit. And the lady was saying that she was willing to take 290, but she had it listed at 310. And I said, well, how will the buyer know that you're willing to take 290, because when I was an agent, I might have shown that person 300,000, but I wasn't going to 310, because
Mm-hmm.
what seller is going to want $20,000 less in that pricing point? And the buyers, as an agent, I'm probably not going to advise my client to ask them for $20,000 less.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
you're wondering why your house isn't selling, but you got it listed over $20,000 from where you're willing to take. I'm always a proponent of listing it where what you're willing to take, and if that's what the market can command.
Right.
And like, she called back and she was a little frustrated at that point. I mean, there's nothing I can do because I'm not an agent, but she was
Mm-hmm.
just talking about how she might just rent it out and move and rent somewhere else where she wanted to go. And I was like, have you had the conversation with your agent about reducing? And she was like, well, when they do put in an offer, I don't want them to negotiate down. I'm like, if you put it at 290 and you stay firm on 290, then that's it. Because they put in an offer for 270 doesn't mean you have to take the 270.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's more people than her assuming, hey, they're gonna, ask less, so let me price it higher, which may put, let's say it's 10,000 people who looking at $300,000 houses at 290, but because it's 310, they'll never see that house.
Right. Right. Yep. Okay. All right. So let's move on and look at other stats. It says here, and of course, this is realtor.com saying that we estimate the current relationship between rising inventory and days on the market to be 6 to 1 ratio for US metros. Every 6 percentage point annual increase in inventory is correlated with 1 day increase in the medium days on the market. Wow, that's a pretty stat that I haven't seen before. That's pretty getting very accurate, or very what do you call, meticulous.
The
A lot
detail.
of details, very detailed. Yeah, I mean, I never thought of in those terms, but they do their research. um do you want to discuss anything about that, or should we just move on? I'll leave it up to you.
So one thing that people don't understand is when they think of metro areas, they think of the whole United States being metro, but it's in
Okay.
reverse.
Right.
There's 97% rural areas versus 3% of the United States being metro. So you have the New Yorks, you've got the Miamis, you've got the Houstons, you got the LAs and the San Franciscos, which are big cities, highly populated, in the Atlantas. However, while it seems like they have the bigger footprint, they're just more known. If you put together the United States, 97% of the United States qualify for USDA rural development because
Really?
they're
I didn't
small
know that.
pockets.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yep, 97. I know because my video went viral off of it.
Okay. I've never done a USDA loan, and lately it's funny. We always hear about the VA loan. We always hear about the FHA loan. We always hear about the 10, 15, 20, 30% conventional loan. Especially in California, I don't know anybody who's done a USDA loan. Can you, for the viewers, and I'm sure a lot of people are not in the metro areas, can you just give us a synopsis of what the USDA loan is while we're talking about it? Because it's very important. I know a little bit about it, but not as much as you do. So give us some explanation on that, please.
So USDA is a 100% finance loan. It is not funded by the government. However, it's backed by the government, which means you as a consumer can get into a property for 0% down. You still have to pay closing costs. There's two caveats. Of course, you have to qualify, but not only do you have to qualify, the property has to be in a USDA territory. How do you find that out? You want to Google USDA eligible property, USDA eligibility, and when you go there, you'll go to a setting that says rural development. You'll click on guaranteed loan, and then this bar will come up where you can put in an address. When you put in the address 123 Main Street, Seaford, Delaware, click on it. It will tell you immediately whether it's eligible or ineligible.
Hmm.
Which means that if it says ineligible, that means the population is too high. If it's eligible, the property qualifies. Now you have to qualify. USDA is they're somewhat lenient on credit. However, with 0% down, they're very conservative. So I call them the government's version of conventional financing. Well, why do I say it's conservative? Because their debt to income ratio is very small. Your
Okay.
front housing ratio can't exceed 29%, and
Ooh.
your back housing ratio typically maxes out at 41% unless you have compensating factors and money left over. Well,
Okay.
what does that equate to in dollars? If you make $2,000 a month, your total debt cannot exceed $820. That
Mhm.
means your housing payment with your mortgage payment.
Right. Right.
I mean,
Okay.
your housing payment with your current debt can't exceed that 41%.
Right. Right.
Um,
Okay.
minimal, so there's not necessarily a credit score. Most lenders have something called an overlay or a guideline where they
Mhm.
look for 580, 620 credit score. But it is a program where you can come with 0% down. The seller can pay up to 6% in closing cost assistance. Um, it's a fixed 30-year mortgage. And the good part is that they will finance up to 102%. Well, how do
Cool.
you do that? If the property comes in at 210, but you're under contract at $200,000, they will allow for you to roll in that additional $10,000 to pay for closing costs. So
Okay.
that's where you get the financing up to 210.
Got it.
Let's say that the seller has given you 6% closing cost assistance and there's $1,500 left over. You can get that $1,500 in cash back to you, if you pay for your appraisal and of what you have to pay for your appraisal and get reimbursed for your earnest money deposit. So
Okay.
it's a
Right.
pretty decent loan,
So this,
man. Not a lot of people use it,
yeah, that's
um,
why. Yeah.
because of where you are.
Exactly. Right. Okay. Do me a favor when you get a chance as we talking, can you put a link or something about the loan or put your information? So if somebody has it, put your email or whatever while we talking so they can connect because you mentioned go here, and I lost it. So if
I
somebody's
got you.
watching a recording, put your information as well. I'll be putting your information in the description, but just put it on the comment and maybe a couple of instructions to go see it. So while you're doing that, let's move on. And what I want to talk about is, and like, oh, by the way, while Kevin is typing in the information for you, those who are watching live, feel free to ask any questions or make any comments. And if you're watching a recording, we want to thank you for watching the recording after the live. And feel free to make comments or ask any questions. I'll be glad to answer it myself, or I can find somebody to answer it if it's in a different neighborhood than Orange County, California. So, So one of the things I want to discuss about, and I made some points depending on the time, I've got a couple of things we want to discuss about. And one of the things I want to talk about is the shifting market dynamics. So what's happening is we've seen that it's taking longer to sell. We've seen that buyers are not jumping at prices. They're waiting for price drops in certain areas. We're seeing that they're waiting for interest rates to drop. We're seeing that they're waiting for the politics and the wars and everything else in there. So, should we say that as we look ahead next 1 year, 2 years, that the market is shifting from the seller's market to maybe the buyer's market? Do you see that coming, or are we still far away from that?
I think we may be seeing it come to a buyer's market. Um, Mike, I think there has to be some sort of correction, right, in the market. Is there?
Right.
Will that mean it's going to crash? No, I think that we're going to have to see housing prices correct themselves and go down.
Hmm.
And this may be the market because we're seeing elevated inventory, so sellers may be willing to take less. And yes, housing prices may come down, and or you instead of making 150 grand, you make 125 when you sell it. It has
Right.
to adjust somewhere, or if not, I've got 13 and 9-year old. They'll never
Uh-huh.
be able to buy a house.
No, it's going to be tough for them. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. So I think there has to be some sort of adjustment. But I really think it's a buyer. It could be a buyer's market if buyers jump in the market and they have an agent who's willing to negotiate. Am I saying go in asking for 100 grand less? No.
No. Yeah. Right. Right.
Maybe asking for $10,000 off and then getting $10,000 in closing cost assistance. You know, if a
Right.
person has to move and they've got to move from California to Texas in order to get this job in the next 60 days, they may be willing to take less.
Okay. Right.
You
Okay. So when it comes to the seller's perspective, and I'm reading out this report that I read and made some questions to talk about today. I made a note here say, what should sellers need to know about pricing realistically and being patient in a shifting market? And I think we're at a crux point where the market is shifting. It may go back to wherever it is, but right now there's a lot of movement going on. So like I said, what sellers need to know about pricing realistically and being patient in a shifting market. When I say that,
Mhm.
what does it mean to you coming from a buyer's perspective and also a lender's perspective?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
No, I
sorry. I
mean,
didn't
if
know
you
you.
right. So what does that mean when I say that what sellers need to know about pricing realistically and being patient in a shifting market? If I was a buyer or if you were a buyer, what does that sentence mean to you, or what do you extrapolate from that?
So as a seller, I think you have to be realistic that your house isn't going to fly off the market like it did during the pandemic. Um, in terms of a buyer, you have to do the same thing. So 53 days is still quick, and I think that's probably still the fastest outside of any type of pandemic that we've seen. That's probably still a fast time based off our 45 years of real estate combined, right?
Right, right.
But
Oh yeah,
buyers are saying, "Oh, what's wrong with this house? It's been on the market for 53 days." So I think there has to be a mindset shift on both sides. There
right,
has to be education
right.
for both people, the sellers and the buyers. And there's not necessarily anything wrong. At the end of the day, people are still spending on what they want. They may want the $700,000 house, but they don't want the $700,000 house payment.
Exactly. Yeah, and
Yeah.
going back to the days on the market, I remember in 2008, I'm not sure if you were in that market or not, 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 6 months was normal. You used to drive on a street and there's 10 signs in a row. They
Yep.
sat there, and then one had a pending sign, and then it fell out. It's back on the market. Those were tough times. I was there. I
I was
saw a lot
there
of,
too.
yeah, I mean, it was a disaster. A lot of homes, people lost homes. And I remember I sold a house VA to this real nice couple. They were renting it. I suggested, why don't you buy it? And they bought it, barely qualified, very nice couple. 28 days into escrow, loan docs were just ordered, ready to close. Guess what happened? Husband got fired or laid off. 28 docs were ordered but not signed, and he got laid off. He called me up and he was crying. A man was crying, telling me he just lost his job. I lost the house. So those were tough times. Yeah. Just to bring it in perspective, what's happening now is like, hey, I just bought a house. I put $200,000 down. I paid 50,000 more, and it's a total new market. So talk about a shift in market. Talk about a shift in mindset. Talk about a shift in real estate. Again, going back 53 days, it's a pretty good market compared to those days. But even compared to a normal market where it takes anywhere from 75 days to 90 days to put it in escrow. So we're so used to home selling in 30 days, or we're so used to 4% interest rate that 6% is bad. I just did a video today. I recorded a video and I looked at the 30-year average interest rate. The 30-year average interest rate is 5.7%. The 53-year average interest rate was 7.75%. And the reason there's a big difference is because in 1980s, the rates were 15%, 18%. So if you just take the 30-year average, then it's 5.7% average. So if you're paying 6.5% or 6%, you're not that way off. So it's all a matter of perspective. And it's all a matter of right now. So if you're a buyer, and I say this all the time, if you're a buyer listening, or if you're a seller, thinking of buying a house, I always say you buy when you are ready, willing, and able to buy. Don't chase the lower prices. Don't chase the lower market because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what the feds are going to do. You don't know what the inflation is going to do. You don't know what the employment is going to do. So if you can buy right now at 6.5%, if you can buy right now at the current home price, and if you're ready to buy, you want to move near mom, or you want to move to a bigger house, you just had a baby, or you want to move to a single story home, you got knee operation, do it, right? I mean, don't chase the market. That's one thing I tell everybody. Don't chase the market. Even I cannot predict it. Kevin cannot predict it. Nobody can predict it. So, just my uninvited advice there.
I got one to add to it, Mike.
Go
If
ahead.
you think if you think, hey, people should rent and it's a renter's market, buy the property for investment and rent it out.
That's right. That's a good one. Yeah. If you can qualify, if you have the money for down payment, if you have the reason to buy it out. It's absolutely things, so let's talk about your topic today regarding inventory and the housing market. It says here, what is the role of lending in today's market? Um, the first thing I want to talk about, or we can talk about, is tightening lending standards. Are lenders becoming stricter with qualifications due to a market uncertainty? And how does that impact first time buyers or those seeking second homes?
Gotcha. So let's talk about the second homes first.
Okay.
So January of 2023, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac increased something called LLPAs, which is loan level pricing adjustments. What does that mean in layman's terms? That means if you're going to get a second home, you're going to pay more fees because they really don't want you to have a second home. They want to keep it for first time home buyers. Essentially, they said, hey, we don't want you to have a second home, but we'll finance it. But if we finance it, you're going to have to pay higher fees to get this
Mhm.
home. So that has been huge for people looking at second homes. They having to bring more money out of pocket.
So, just a
In
quick
turn,
question.
go
When you
ahead.
say second home, it's a second home like a vacation home or a home to rent it out, like a rental? Just to clarify.
So
Yeah.
So terminology, second home is a home that you would use as a vacation rental. Like
Right.
if I'm here in Atlanta and I decide I want something in Savannah, so me and my family can go visit, that's considered second home.
Right.
If I'm in Atlanta and we buy a house in Savannah, but we're going to rent it out long term or for month to month, for a year lease, or if we're going to do Airbnb, then that's considered an investment property.
Correct.
The
Right.
difference
Okay.
between the two, investment property will cost you 10% down. Second home costs you 10%. Investment property costs you 20% down. Second
Right.
home costs you 10% down.
Right. Okay. So there's a difference. What about the
Yep.
interest rate difference in there? How much of a difference is it?
Interest rate is probably second home is probably a little like maybe a 0.25% less than an
Hmm.
investment property, but the LLPAs could be totally different.
Okay.
There was always that extra fee for investment properties, but not on second homes
Right. Okay.
until now.
Right, correct. Okay. I like the next point that we're going to talk about, and that usually comes in when the market slows down. Not that it's slowing down, but who knows what's going to happen. But creative financing options. Here are the options. There are products which the lenders will bring in. We've already seen those. One is the rate buy downs, the interest only loans, and then you have other financing options to help buyers navigate higher rates, and also the variable loans. So when the market slows down, where do you think a lot of loan products will go? Are there going to be a lot of rate buy downs, or a lot of interest only loans, or 5-1 or 7-1 or 10-1 loans? What do you think? Or let's chat on that.
I think we may see. So we see the 2-1 buy downs because interest rates increase. I think we may see the 40-year loan where you have the first 10 years is interest only, the next 30 years pays down principal and interest. What does that do? That stretches out that payment an additional 10 years, puts additional 10 years of amortization on that payment, which then makes your payment lower to where you can afford it. And then within that time frame, if you're building equity or paying down on the principal, you can refinance when the market changes. Um, I always equate it to a car. I know when I first started buying cars, probably the highest term was 60 months. Now you got 84 months, 72 months. Well, you go to the car dealer and say, hey, I can't really pay over $600 a month, but you're saying this payment is $750. Oh, no problem. We'll stretch it out to 84 months, which just means you're paying more in interest. Your payment gets to where you want it to be, but you're
Right.
paying more in interest over time.
Right. In the long term, you're paying a lot more interest, but in the meantime, you could refinance again. I mean, I've refinanced. I've refinanced a car back in the early 2000. We got a car. It was like 7%, and when the rates dropped after 2 years, because special, at 3%, we refinanced. So
Right.
yeah, you can refinance cars as well. Yeah.
Yep. People
So
do it all
okay.
the time.
Right. Right. Okay. And the other thing is, this is advice for sellers when it comes to loans. Should seller consider offering to help with buyer closing cost or rate buy downs to make their home more attractive?
I think so. So I was talking to a buyer, and he said, "What's the difference between the seller giving me $10,000 in closing cost assistance or dropping the price $10,000?" And I explained to him, if the seller is willing to give $10,000 in closing cost assistance, and you can use that for a buy down, let's say on a $400,000 house, that probably saves you somewhere around $350, $400 a month. If he took it from 400,000 to 390, that would change your payment to probably $50 a month.
Okay.
So for him, $10,000 is $10,000. Him or her is $10,000, $10,000. To you, it's more beneficial to do the buy down because you save more money over the course of that
Mhm.
2-year period of time.
Okay. So the buy down, the less payment is only for 1 or 2 years, right? It's not for the life of the loan, right?
No. So I'm gonna give an example to buy
Right.
down.
I
Let's
just want to
say a
clarify so that they
buyer does
understand. Right.
does FHA financing and their interest rate is being quoted at 6.125%.
Mm-hmm.
The seller is willing to do a 2-1 buy down, which means 2 years they buy down the rate 1% each year.
Right.
So once they make start making their first payment, their payments will be based off of, for the first 12 months, 4.125%.
Correct.
In the
Okay.
13th month, the payment is now based off of 5.125%.
Mm-hmm.
After, on the 25th month to the 360th month, if you keep your house that long, then your payment is based off of 6.125 per month.
Right.
So it's buying down the rate for those couple of years to help you with the payment shop. And then also we did that to be creative in hopes that in that 2-year period of time, you
Mhm.
have the ability to refinance and get a lower fixed rate. This is a fixed product, but meaning if in that 2-year period of time rates drop to 5%, you can refinance, and when your clock starts, immediately after you finance, you're no longer in the 2-1 buy down situation. The
Right.
bonus is, let's say you had a year left, that money that wasn't spent in that year for the buy down will pay down your principal. So then
Mm-hmm.
you'll have a principal reduction and a lower interest rate, which will help you on your payment.
I see. Okay. Cool. Good to understand that. Okay, well, I'm going to talk about the next one. I'm going to skip a few that we've already talked about. We've talked about, the politics and things like that. But one of the things, and you mentioned this also, is the government policies and market impact. So, talking about trends, are there any current or proposed legislation or government policies like property tax adjustments or first time home buyer incentives that could affect the housing market? Of course, this is very local and regional, but have you heard of anything national? I know you talked about the $25,000 credit. I guess the Democrats are proposing that, but not getting into politics. But can you talk about certain programs that you may be aware of, maybe in Atlanta, but maybe not in California, that may help buyers and sellers? Should there be certain policies that they can use to their
Right.
advantage?
So I know in different parts of the country, something that's also affecting, besides the interest rate, there's two things that are also affecting monthly mortgage payments and affordability. You alluded to it in the beginning of increasing homeowners insurance rates.
Hmm.
And then the second part is because we've seen 5 consecutive years of housing increases, property taxes have increased
Tremendously.
tremendously, right? So when these counties and cities are assessing property values, that once they assess them higher, that gets passed on to you. What I have seen is in some areas, some people's properties have doubled, so now their property taxes are doubling. And there's legislation in different parts of the country. I believe Illinois is one. I know there's a few counties in Georgia who are looking to possibly put a cap on what taxes could be. Because if not, that even if rates come down and housing prices go down, they never adjust down the property taxes.
Right, right. Okay.
So,
Yep. Right,
yep.
right.
So those are pieces of legislation in local markets that could affect the housing market as well. On a
Right,
positive, if they can
right, right.
stagnate the growth.
And one thing about the property tax, just to let you know, for those that are watching, property taxes are different from county to county. Like in California, I mean Orange County, California, we had the Prop 13. I think it was Jarvis uh, regulation, where our property taxes are fixed. For example, in Orange County, it's 1.1% of the purchase price, and then it can only go up like 2% or 3% per year from that 1.1%. But I know some other states, I'm not sure if it's Texas, I believe Texas or some other states, they could double your property tax just like that. In fact, there was one state or one county where the property has tripled in just 1 year. So if you are paying on a $400,000 house, 4,000 a year in taxes, now you're paying 12,000, not counting the insurance went up from 1,000 to 5,000. So there's a big turmoil going on because of property taxes, because of insurance. But I just wanted the viewers to know that property tax is different in different counties and different states. California, we are lucky with the Prop 13. We are safe that it only increases a certain amount per year. And we start at 1.1% of the purchase price, which is the best thing that has happened in California or in Orange County real estate market, that we just love it. So, all right. And then on the lender side, talking about the government policies and market impact, how the government programs like FHA, VLN loans, or other incentives can help both buyers and sellers in this volatile market.
Got you.
Yeah.
So, the government, so typically FHA, VA, and USDA loans typically have lower interest rates than any other loans. Conventional, even if you put down 20%, you're still going to have a lower rate with FHA, VA, and USDA, right? So it also they have low barriers of entry for down payment. While you do have conventional financing has 3% down payment program, you have to qualify to be in that program. Well,
Okay.
FHA, there's no income qualification for the 3.5% down payment, neither for VA, and USDA has a family household income qualification, but it's increased over the last couple of years. So even families making well over $100,000 can get into it, depending on the family size.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it does help people with monthly payment and money that they have to come out of pocket.
Right. Okay. And just to clarify, this is for owner occupied homes, right? What you're talking
Owner
about,
occupied,
FHA.
yeah.
It cannot
Yep.
be FHA, and VA cannot be for rental, right?
No, they're not, unless you're living. If you buy 2 to 4 unit,
Right. Okay. Right.
FHA or VA, and you live in one of the units, excuse me, 1 to 4, 2 to
Well,
4
1
units.
to 4. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. If you live in one of the units, you can rent out the other units that are vacant, but it has
Right.
to be your primary
Right.
residence.
What about for USDA? Same thing. USDA.
No, USDA single family only,
Right. Single family or condos, but not rental.
not
Can you?
rental, right?
But you can buy condos or no? Townhouses and condos on USDA?
No, because they typically aren't going to be in the USDA territory.
Right. Not in those
Yeah.
rural areas
You
or
don't want a
whatever.
100-unit condo with one septic system.
Okay. But good to know, because I haven't done a USDA loan in Orange County. We haven't done a whole lot, because it's quote a metro area. And
Gotcha.
is there a cap on USDA loan? Like VA has a cap, FHA has a cap. What's the USDA cap rate? A maximum loan amount.
I think around, depending, like in my area, I think it's like 397, and that's only because you can only go so high with your debt to income ratio.
Right. Right. Okay. So there is a limit, right? So
Yep,
yeah.
there's a limit. Yep.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So we're pretty much ending on this session. I wanted to leave a few time open for Q&A, but I guess we don't have any Q&A. But are there anything you want to mention, Kevin, that we haven't talked about that impacts the housing market, that may impact that we have not talked about? Maybe it was inflation or employment, or we haven't talked about employment. What's going on with employment
So,
and its impact on housing? That's the thing, you know.
right. So the jobs market, the jobs report that came out a couple of weeks ago said that we have a ton of jobs available, right? Um, what I am seeing, two things. In terms of jobs, I think that the jobs that are available still offer non-livable wages, to be nice about it,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why those jobs are available. I am seeing more people that are contract work and gig workers who are making decent money. Because you control your own taxes doesn't mean you should not file.
Okay.
It also means that you're responsible for paying your portion. And just understand this: if you make $100,000 in gig work and you're at that point you're still considered self-employed, and you write off $80,000 worth of income that came in that you said are liabilities, we can only qualify you for $20,000 of income that you show the government or to Fannie
Mm-hmm.
Mae and Freddie Mac.
Right. Right.
Now, there's other options for bank statement loans, but you
Right.
have to have some funds down. So I'll leave with this example. Either way, you're going to pay a chunk of money to somebody. You're either going to pay the chunk of money to Uncle Sam for your taxes and show that you made money, or you're going to, if you show that you don't make money, then you'll have to pay a larger down payment for a home when you're putting down a down payment. And
Right.
on those creative financing things, there's no down payment assistance program.
Exactly. Okay. Okay. Well, there's one thing I want to talk about, which we didn't talk about, and I want to mention it in the perspective of what are you seeing or have you seen, and that is has to do with the home equity. As I mentioned earlier, anybody who bought 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago, if you bought in 2010, 2008, your home has doubled or tripled. But even if you bought 5 years ago, you've got, depending on where you are, 100,000 equity or whatever. I read a report that last year, whoever bought homes last year, on average, they've made $25,000 in equity. So
Mm.
the question, what are you seeing? If, or take my example, for example, me as a typical consumer, I bought a house 7 years ago for, let's say, $500,000 in California. Now it's worth, let's say, 750. Okay. So as a seller, and I'm thinking about buying a house, move to a bigger house, or I'm a little bit conservative, should I pull some equity out, keep my house, and buy a small rental? So what are you seeing? Are a lot of people using equity, selling it and buying a bigger down payment for the second home? Or are you seeing conservatives where they, okay, let's pull 100,000 out, go buy a 4 unit or a duplex or a house for the kids or for rental? What are you seeing there?
I'm actually seeing all three scenarios. So I'm seeing people say, for what we have and the interest rate we have, we can't find on the market and have that same type of payment,
Hmm.
right? So I see people pulling out equity to refinance. I mean, they're refinancing their home or doing a home equity line of credit to do fix up and repairs in the house so they can make their house and stay there, understanding, hey, we're not
Right.
going anywhere.
Hmm.
I'm also seeing people refinance and say, hey, over the course of this last couple of years, we've taken on a lot of debt. Why don't we just refinance and consolidate our debt in this loan so we have one payment, which is the mortgage payment, and be done with that debt, and we know we've got one payment. Then
Okay.
I have people who are either refinancing or getting home equity lines of credit, taking that money and using it to buy rental properties. Um, some people, like I had one client, she was looking to pull out some cash and say, hey, I'll just buy one cash. And I told her, why don't you pull that cash out with a home equity line of credit? Because that was the best thing for her at the time.
Right.
And instead of buying one property cash, use that over multiple properties so that, all your cash isn't stuck into one house and you've got multiple houses cash flowing. And that's what she's doing.
Right, right. Okay, cool. So you are seeing a little bit of everything. People moving to a bigger house, using the equity for a bigger down payment, letting go of a 3 or 4%, but they're putting a big down payment, so that may reduce their loan amount. You're also seeing people buying second homes or investment homes. They're doing,
Yeah.
which
But
is a good
people are
thing.
trying to utilize their equity to their
Yeah,
benefit because if not,
yeah,
it goes away.
right, right. So HELOC, which is the home equity line of credit, is a good way to do it, because let's say you just want $50,000, then you only pull $50,000. If you want $200,000, California, then you can pull $200,000. You only pay interest on what you pull out. So even though HELOCs are like 7, 8, 9% interest rate, you only paying on the money that you pull out when you pull out. You don't start the payment right away. So that's the advantage, right, on HELOCs.
Yeah, and actually, let's say you pull out 100,000, in California, $200,000 in equity, but what you're doing only cost you 50. You're actually only paying on that 50,000 that you pulled out of a line.
Right.
Yep.
So I'm only paying 50, but then after 2 months, I need to buy something else and I pull out an additional 30, then I'm starting that 30. So
Sorry. Yep.
I may have a line of credit of $200,000 or 100,000, but if I pull out 10,000 or 20,000, I only pay on that much. So that's the advantage of the. And I have a HELOC myself for emergency and all that.
Got
Um,
you.
I had a HELOC and I paid it off because it went up to 9%, so I had to pay it off.
Got
Um,
you.
right, right. So okay. Any closing comments, Kevin? Then we'll call it a day.
Apply. If you're interested in purchasing a home, just apply and see where you're at. Get yourself
Right,
in position for whatever happens in the economy, whether it's left, right, middle.
right.
Just be prepared. And if your goal is to purchase a home, you need to see what action items you need to take.
Right. Okay. And I'll put Kevin's information in the description. And my last comment is two things. One, thank you for watching if you're live. Thank you for watching if you're watching the recording. Make comments, please share, please subscribe. And the other thing that I want to say is that if you are thinking about buying, I say two things. One is don't chase the market, and you buy if you are ready, willing, and able to buy. So thanks again, Kevin. I'll call you back sometime down the road. We'll talk about a different topic, but appreciate your help in being a guest here. And thank you all for watching. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate you.
You got it. Thank you.